So is this your house?
This is my father-in-law's house. He bought the land from his father-in-law in 1933 before my mother-in-law and father-in-law got married.
How long have you been living here for?
I've been here about 53 years.
Ustaz Dan, let's go back in time. When did you decide to come to Palestine and why?
I came in 1965. The university I went to in Cleveland, Ohio, had a program where they sent somebody either to Bethlehem or they sent somebody to their Mullah schools. I had never been on a plane. I had never been abroad. And I decided I'd take a year between my junior and senior years. So I came to teach at the school for a year. I never taught before. It was terrible. The only time my whole life I contemplated suicide was that first year. I'm going to throw myself off the balcony and be done with it. When I left the Friends School, they have a thing in Arabic where you can break a jara. You can break that and you'll never come back.
Yes.
I thought, I need to be doing this. I don't ever want to return here again.
Wow.
Then when I got to the States and finished my year, I didn't want to start out my working career with this failure. And I came back here, and each year got better. So I eventually became an okay teacher, but it took time.
Okay, so you went back to the U.S.?
I went back to the U.S. and finished college.
How did you decide to come back again to Palestine?
I didn't want to begin thinking I had failed in my first job. I wanted to try it again to prove to myself that I could do it. And the rest is history. I've kind of been here ever since. Eventually, my wife had also taught at the school, and we...
How did you meet?
We taught together at the school. And so my father-in-law didn't want a foreigner. And he didn't want a foreigner who was only upstairs for madrasa. He wanted doctor or muhandis or muhammi. Shoo, upstairs for madrasa or ajnabi. He didn't want. And so the day before, but he agreed. And the only reason he agreed was she was the fifth daughter. She was 26. Ofishnas Badu al-Bab, the Talabid.
Yes.
And so the day before the wedding, he said to me, Ana badik shia mazboot, but into ahsam and balash, I'm better than nothing. So it turned out I was better than nothing.
Okay, Ustaz Dan, let's go back to the 60s. You lived through the war of 1967. How was that tragic event affected your life, and how did you live through that?
I think what struck me most about that is how people manage when something bad happens to them. People keep their perspective, they keep their sense of humor. One time my mother-in-law was picking grape leaves, there were grapevines in the yard here, and a Jeep passed, and they say, Futi Juba forbade, and she said, Benenako. She would stand up.
Yeah.
And I think that's what impressed me about the Palestinians. They're resilient. They put up with things and they still keep kind of a sense of perspective.
So you lived through many events in Palestine,
Right.
the Intifada, the two Intifada.
And my children were young during the Intifada. All the gray hair, I had black hair at one time, became because of the children. My son was throwing stones, and one time when he was in college, he was in a pool hall in the States, and a man came up to him and said, where are you from? And he said, I'm from Pennsylvania. He said, no, where are you really from? And he said, I was raised in the Middle East. And the guy said, where in the Middle East? And Ramsey said, oh, you won't know the place called Ramallah. He said, I know Ramallah. And he asked Ramsey, "Did you throw stones?" And Ramsey said, "Yeah." He said, "This is where you hit me."
No.
He had been in the IDF, and he remembered this kid, 16-year-old boy. And so Ramsey looks at the scar on his forehead and said, "Looks like my work. Looks like something I would do."
Oh, that's a great story.
Yeah, it's a great story.
You want to go inside?
Yes.
Show me around?
Yes.
Yalla.
Please, go ahead.
Thank you. It's beautiful mix of both cultures, the East and the West.
Everything in the house belonged to somebody else and belonged to a relative of my wife's. And I like that idea.
Yeah.
I like having things that other people used. So practically nothing in the house is new. Everything has belonged to somebody else.
Can feel the spirit of these people.
Because I was here when the Israelis took the census after the war, I got census papers like the Arab. So I've had a Hawiyya since 1967.
هوية.
So I don't have to have a visa because I have a Hawiyya أنا زي العرب.
هوية خضراء.
هوية خضراء وأنا جوا سافر فلسطيني كمان. When I go, the first time I went to the bridge, I can't go through Ben Gurion, I have to go through Amman. The first time I went, the woman behind the counter said, "Hutchison, Philistini?" I said, "Hutchison, Philistini." She said, "How do you have?" I said, "I was here." She said to me, "When did you come to Israel?" I said, "You came to me." I was there and you came and you gave me the ID card. And I couldn't
Just like Palestinians.
I couldn't go through Ben Gurion. One time I asked, because I have an American passport, they said, the Palestinian passport comes first.
Yeah.
So they said to me, Amman ilak, you have to go through Amman.
Wow.
So I go through Amman. Oh, خلاص.
خلاص.
ليش لا؟
Ustaz Don, can you tell us about your novels and books?
I can, sure. After I retired, go back to the beginning. Initially, my wife and I had said once the children were in school, she would go back to work. I would not work anymore. I would write. But she died the summer Ramsey started kindergarten. So I had to work full time, and I also postponed the writing. So when I finally retired from the school, I wrote in a year's time 10 books.
Wow.
And I wanted to explain to Westerners the Palestinian story.
Let's talk more about this. What message do you send the world about Palestinians and Palestine? And let's be more specific for foreigners and internationals who are thinking of visiting Palestine but maybe are afraid.
Yeah, no one should be afraid. I think one thing about Palestinians that has stuck in my mind all these years is the hospitality and the courteousness. It may not come from the Elb, but it's there.
Yeah.
Somebody comes to the door, what do you say? Ahla wa sahla, nishra bahwe. Even if you're busy, you never say,
I'm busy.
I'm
Go
busy.
back.
You never say, hey, Miss Manasib. You always say, ahla wa sahla. And I like that. And for any foreigner who comes, falls in love with Palestine, and they need another side of the story. They can't just have one side. They need to have another side as well.
It's so beautiful what you just said about Palestine and Palestinians.
And I believe it. My tummy, there used to be a telephone.
Here we go. This is the telephone. Do you cook?
I cook. Because I've been a single dad for a number of years, and so I cook.
What's your favorite?
I like a lot of the things. I think when I have guests, I do matlube as one of the things. I like imluchia. I like sambusik. I like kifta. I like everything, I think. But I do kaiko mamu, and I do.
You make mamoul?
I make mamu, and my mamoul
that's
is
a very difficult thing
my
to do.
mamoul is good, and I make it and I ship it to the States to my
Really?
children. Yeah.
So, as an American, was it easy for you to learn Arabic?
No, I think if you're not born learning Arabic, you can speak Arabic, but I think you're always going to speak it with an accent.
Yeah.
They're always going to be able to tell that you're not native Arabic. One time I was in a shop in Jerusalem when I could still go to Jerusalem with my daughter. And I was talking, we were speaking Arabic, Mabad, and I was pointing something out to her, and I put my hand on her shoulder. And the guy in the shop called her over. And he said, "Hey, mommy, هذا الرجال أدبوكي. كيف أنت بمشي مع هذا الرجال؟ خليه يبتسك كيف تهد. بنتي بو مش أدبوي هو أبوي."
Ustaz Don, how did you maintain a happy life in Palestine despite having the Israeli occupation here?
I think it's one thing I learned from Islam, that you accept things and everything happens because Hek al-Biddo. And there's no point in getting upset about things because in the end, everything's going to work out all right. For my children, they were raised Ittilal, they were raised Intifada. And when they look back at their childhood, they would say, "Baba, we had a great childhood." And I said, "How could you have a great childhood? There was Ittilal, there was Intifada, and you were raised in a single-parent household." And she said, "You made it so wonderful for us." And so I feel good that my children, as adults now, can look back and say, they had a great childhood. Before the first Intifada began, in the beginning there was this unity. I remember seeing one woman getting a boy out of a jeep. The boy had been arrested, and the woman went up, "Fallahi, Hadi, Hafadi." And I was watching, and the soldier kept saying, "This isn't your grandson." She said, "La Sadini Hadi Hafadi." And she pulled him out of the car, out of the jeep. And when she turned the corner, she said to Khalti, "Eish ismak habibti." Wasn't his sikto.
Wow.
There was that unity.
So, let me ask you this. What do you think the solution would be for Palestinians? And how do you see Palestine in 100 years?
It depends on the day you ask me. Some days I'm very optimistic. Other days I'm very pessimistic. And I look at the Palestinians because they're such a minority. Among all the Arabs in the Arab world, they're a minority. And I could, in my pessimistic days, I can see the Palestinians gone in a sense. They're no longer actually here. In my more optimistic days,
yes,
I think, well, there can be, I think that all governments fall eventually. And I think the Israeli government at one point in time will fall. And the Palestinians have been here forever. And the Palestinians are still going to be here forever. They're adaptable.
Okay.
And they are steadfast. And in my optimistic days, I think, well, the days may be numbered, but they may be numbered for the Israelis.
Yeah.
They're not numbered for the Palestinians.
Yeah.
They will survive because they are survivors.
Yeah.
They've survived the Turks, they've survived the British, they've survived other groups, and they'll survive the Israelis too. I'm optimistic that way.
Let's be optimistic.
Let's be optimistic,
Yes.
Yeah. We're going to be optimistic
Yes.
today. Today's our optimistic
Yes.
day. Yeah.
أستاذ دون، شكرا كتير.
أهلا وسهلا.
شكرا لأنك عايش هون. شكرا for being part of our culture, our Palestine.
It's been, they have given more to me than I've given to them. It has been a blessing for me to have lived here. And I think that Islam says things are written, and I think my days were written here. And I don't understand why, but I'm happy that it's been that way, because it's worked out really, really well for me. Though I'm still a foreigner, but I'm a foreigner with ties here. And my children are not foreign, which is interesting.
Yeah.
They don't see themselves as being foreign, even though they have an American father. They see themselves as being Palestinian, which I think is a good thing, because
Yeah.
I've raised them to be Palestinian. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.